Hey everybody, this is Jason Alba once again talking tech, and today we get to talk with Floyd May, who is a
Hi.
software industry expert, been in the industry for a while, and of course Pluralsight author. And you may remember that it is April. Today's April 12th, and we do at Pluralsight, we do a thing called Free April. At least last year we did, and this year we do. So you can watch Floyd's Pluralsight courses or mine or any of the other 7,000 plus courses, hands-on stuff. There's all kinds of cool stuff in Pluralsight. You can go there and get an account. You still got 18 days left for the month. You don't have to put a credit card in, which means there's nothing to cancel after the end of April. So go check that out and take advantage of almost 3 weeks of free April. Floyd, today I want to chat with you about you, like who you are and your tech journey and your career and your perspective and all that stuff. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and where you live and kind of what you do, and then I want to get into your history.
Okay, cool. Well, first things first, you said right before we went live that we already had some people sitting in the YouTube channel watching, and I'm betting that there are some people from Techlahoma, which is a local nonprofit here in Oklahoma. I'm actually from Tulsa. Techlahoma is a nonprofit whose entire mission is to increase education, career development for technologists like you and me here in the state of Oklahoma. So I want to kind of give a little shout out to all my Techlahomies out here. You said it's April, so that means, oh my goodness, here this summer, I'm going to be, that is when the counter rolls over and I'm starting my third decade in the software industry.
Wow.
I got my first real software job was doing quality assurance for a software company in Stillwater, Oklahoma, when I was still finishing up my computer science degree. And so I got.
So was that an internship?
No, it was a part-time job. So it was part-time hourly, writing tests, executing tests, and writing testware. So a lot of this company was like a toolkit company. So they sold software that programmers used to then build their software. So testing what they built meant you had to write programs to put it through its paces.
Was that is that how testing was 30 years ago?
20 years ago. And honestly, it's hard to say because Stillwater wasn't exactly the mecca of technical practice at the time.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of manual testing involved, and just a lot of rote, tedious. As a human, I'm going to go through and I'm going to click this and I'm going to look at this image that gets generated and compare it to a baseline image and visually check to see if they were the right, shape, dimension, color, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think back in the olden days, if you will, 20 years ago, I don't know. It seems like let's go back further to green screen. Testing on a green screen or a green screen app, I feel like is a lot easier than testing in what we need to test the environments we test in today with the different browsers and the different sizes and all the different nuances. Whereas before it was a much more controlled environment, everything from the interface to the hardware to the connection, there weren't as many options. And so doing manual testing, it wasn't that bad, right? But now you throw something out somewhere and it's like, yeah, but is this going to work in these 18 different environments? And what if somebody turns the screen sideways, and will it work in the 18 environments then, right? So I don't know. It's interesting to think about the evolution of what QA has been, but that's where you cut your teeth.
Yeah, I started in QA, and it was, I think it's an interesting place to start in software because it really gives you a clear understanding of what things are humans good at and what things are computers good at. And it turns out humans are really bad at tedious, rote, step-by-step, repetitive mechanical instructions. We suck at it. We're just terrible at it. We skip steps, we misread things, we get bored, we get frustrated. And computers don't do any of that stuff. So it means computers are really, really good at doing that. And so as much as possible, let the computer do the tedious stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So I'm wondering how your CS training up until that point, I don't know if you had any real practice, but it was a lot of school, right?
Yeah.
impacted the way you did QA. And then later, how having been in QA impacted how you designed code or any of the elements of software.
Well, so I'll say this, and like I'm glad I have a CS degree. I wouldn't, if I had the chance to go back and do it over again, I wouldn't have picked a different degree program. But my CS curriculum really did not give me any tools to deal with quality in software. It really, really didn't. Like and also I think a lot of like today's understanding of how you manage software and you manage software complexity and software quality, like I think that knowledge just wasn't, it just didn't exist back then. So I really didn't get to dip into my CS curriculum until I moved out of QA and into actually writing the software itself. My CS curriculum really didn't give me much in the way of tools there. And in particular at Oklahoma State, go Pokes, the CS program was only in like a decade or two prior to when I got there, moved out of the mathematics program. And so the relationship between my CS degree and a career in software development would be kind of like somebody getting a physics degree and then trying to go into a career in civil engineering.
Yeah. Where did it move into from mathematics?
It got its own department.
Oh, okay. So I want to spend a little bit of time on CS degrees. And I'm neither for nor against them. I don't care. If somebody has it, great. If somebody wants it, great. If you don't have it, you could still have an amazing career in software without a CS degree, right? I remember I was with a team that was kind of new to me, and we were whiteboarding a problem, and they were saying stuff I'd been developing for a couple years, and they were talking about stuff that I had never heard of. I couldn't understand the concept of what they were talking about. And that's when I was like, I'm out. I'm not a developer anymore. I'm a manager, I guess, if they'll let me be a manager. So anyways, one day we're talking about a problem. And my passion back in the day was database-driven websites and focusing on database. Like I really liked designing databases and figuring out efficient queries and all that stuff. And I like doing all the other stuff too. Fine. I hated graphics and anything that had to do with layout stuff. But anyways, so we're sitting in this room and they're like, yeah, we can't do this thing. And I was like, why not? Like I had never seen the database before, but I'd seen a lot of other databases and I designed a lot of other databases. And these were kids that were like top students in the CS department at their school, right? And they're like, well, because the database just isn't designed that way. And I was like, I don't really understand what you're talking about, because there's a lot of flexibility within a database, and there's a lot of flexibility if you're good at SQL, and then manipulating what you get from SQL. I mean, I don't understand what's going on here. I said, can I see your database? And they're like, well, yeah, it's right here. And it was one table. The entire database for this very sophisticated thing was one table. And I was like, wait, did I just enter the Twilight Zone? Like, you guys clearly are way smarter than I am. Your technical training went way more in depth than mine did. I got a CIS degree. You talk circles around me, and they weren't arrogant about any of this. It was just a lot of maybe imposter syndrome that I was feeling. And when I saw the database, I was like, I actually do know something that they don't know. And I asked him about it. I said, well, what about like normalization and, some of these database design practices? And they're like, we don't have database classes in the CS program or department. And that's when I realized, like, okay, you might get good CS training and, as Patrick says, theory, a lot of theory, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be an excellent developer, right? And what you just brought up is a deficiency in the CS program. And so what I want to bring out, and there's a lot of people on Twitter who are like, I don't have a CS degree, can I even be successful? Is that, you know what? You can be successful a CS degree doesn't guarantee, it doesn't even give you the whole breadth or depth of everything that you want or need, right, as a developer.
I was looking around at my bookshelf, so I've got my bookcase right behind me, and I was looking for this book because this is actually
Move it over just a little bit. Move it right to where your face is. There you go. Okay, modern database.
This was my textbook for my database class, and it wasn't under the CS program. It was actually I took an MIS class as an elective, so I could learn databases.
Mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely right. And I had the same experience. There are a couple of phrases that you used that I'm actually going to poke at a little bit because I heard you say like these people are smarter than me, and I just don't believe in that kind of perspective of the world. I don't believe that innately people are just smarter than one another. I just think that we all have different skills and different abilities, and I think
for sure
we have to look at software development as a very multidisciplinary thing. It's not like you can't just learn software development. That's like, it's like learning life. Are you really, really good at life?
Right.
Parts of it, I guess, I hope.
For now.
Yeah.
Maybe in a year that'll change, right? As the technology of life changes, we get outdated. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And of course, they were smarter than me, but in certain areas, right? And I was better than them in other areas. Like one of my fortes is written communication. That's just something that I'm strong at, and a lot of developers aren't.
Preach.
So okay, so let's go back to you. So you were in school, CS program. You got a part-time job doing QA. And you thought, man, this sucks. I want to be on the other side. I want to be a developer. Or you thought, man, this is really important and good, and I see how QA fits. Like, what did you think about QA at the time?
Looking back on it now, I think I looked at it kind of as a little bit of both. The phrase "every dog has hair," kind of fits there. Like there were parts of the QA job that I really just didn't enjoy, but I loved the people, I loved the work. I loved being able to think creatively and be creative. You mentioned that written communication skill, and I'm just going to throw this out. Like, oh my goodness, good communication skills are such an important thing to develop, to cultivate, to invite candid feedback on. In technology careers or not, like it's so essential, so super duper essential. I think the pivotal moment for me, in terms of like, what did I want to do with my life, happened like a year prior to getting that QA job. And that was, I'd actually started my, my college career studying to do aerospace engineering. And I did it for a year and I made all A's and I was doing great. And then I just realized, yeah, I'm making A's and I'm getting good grades, but I just don't enjoy this. I'm not enjoying my classwork. And even in my second semester, we had one of those egg drop challenges where we went to the top of the football stadium and dropped our contraption to see if the egg inside of it would break. Yeah. And like, who wouldn't love that? And here I am having, sort of an existential crisis. Like I'm in college and I'm doing these things that are supposed to be exciting for me and fun for me, but I don't like it. What do I do? So I had a period of about 6 or 8 weeks of just soul searching, trying to figure out if I don't do aerospace engineering, then what? And I looked back on like 4th grade playing around with the Logo programming language in school, Turtle graphics. 6th grade all the way through high school, I was the smart kid in the computers class who would like I had subscriptions to technology magazines, and they had like GW Basic programs that you could type in and play with. So you could like type in your own game and then play the game in computers class. I'm like, heck yeah, I could throw some of that down. And, coming to that realization, like I love programming. I really enjoy it. I love the feeling of being able to make the computer do what I tell it to do.
Yeah. Oh man, I got to tell you though, when I started working as a developer, I had anxiety around pushing the submit button, where it's like you write something and then you commit it and you're like, is it going to work or crash? And like on the 10th time, it's like, I need a therapist. I can't push the button anymore. It is definitely fun when it works, for sure.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I share that. Like I completely relate. And going from a blank page to a working program, there's so many steps and levels of complexity going from 0 to something that's actually like meaningful. And the bigger it gets, the more that anxiety just sort of builds, right?
Yeah.
For me, I had another one of those sort of pivotal moments in my career, 8 or 9 years after I finished my degree. And it was one of where I just started observing how the relationship between people like me, programmers, worked with product managers, project managers, business people. And I'm thinking, so ostensibly, I'm a professional in this career, in this industry, which means I'm supposed to conduct myself with professionalism, which means that I'm supposed to be developing expertise as a programmer. Yet what I'm also discovering is that I really don't have any tools or any techniques to keep the bugs at bay. Bugs are just a way of life. This is just how things work. And I remember just feeling a lot of angst about that. Like I just like, how can I call myself a professional if I also have to convince people, yeah, software just has bugs. And what's a bug? It's a mistake. It's an error. It's somebody did something wrong.
Or it's a deficiency where you weren't smart enough to, you weren't skilled, you weren't professional enough to push it out without a bug.
Right. And I think that deficiency was one of one, mindset, and two, of techniques. Like is it possible to build it without a bug? I used to believe no. And especially starting in QA, I developed this false notion of there's always a bug to find if you test hard enough. And two, like I didn't know, like, practically, how do I know that I'm not writing bugs? And it was enough where I was like, do I need to go into management? Do I need to pick a different career path? I mean, it was really eating me. And so I started searching for answers. And I came across the writings of Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob. And he's very opinionated about quality. He's very opinionated about bugs. And it rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, oh, I'm freaking mad at this guy, and I even kind of went down this path of like, I'm going to figure out just how much of a charlatan he really is, because there's no possible way what he's writing is true. There's no possible way that this is it, because the reality that he described about, software shouldn't have any bugs and all of that was so different than what I had experienced, where it's like
bugs are just reality.
Right. And most of software development is bug hunting. So what I found at the time, the company that he co-founded had a very public policy on their website that says, if you find a bug in the software that we write for you, we will fix it. We will fix it as soon as possible, and we will fix it for free. And that, like, the light bulb came on for me. It completely transformed my perspective on this, because I knew that for every single company that I had ever worked for up until that point, if they had adopted a policy like that, they'd start hemorrhaging money and they'd go out of business.
Because bugs were so accepted as just the way it is. And maybe even they saw it as a revenue stream, really. I mean, maintenance.
It was accepted so much so that clients were on the hook to pay for bug fixes. And of course, wait, I have to pay for you cleaning up your mistakes? What kind of client relationship is that going to foster?
But back in the olden days, there wasn't a whole lot of options, right? Like, if you wanted something custom made, that was just something you had to take with it, really. Nowadays, I feel like with what's happened with like Twitter and Facebook and all the consumer software experiences that we have at home, we have a much higher demand for quality and speed and UX and all that stuff, which is making commercial software be higher quality and faster and more beautiful and more intuitive, right? And less buggy.
I agree. I think the industry's come a long way over the past couple of decades, because there's so much more knowledge that's available. Like, here's how you can actually accomplish this. Here, like, let's talk about TDD. Let's talk about the testing pyramid. Let's talk about UI instrumentation type tests, where you can actually teach a computer program to click and type its way through your UI and experience it the way an end user would experience it. You know, accessibility, all of these things. You rewind the clock 15, 20 years, that stuff didn't exist. Or if it did exist, you had to really work hard to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, programming is so different now than when I was like actually in it. I just want to jump back into on the comments, Devin, who I'm guessing you know because he says hi.
Hi, Devin.
He says he pulled out one of your phrases, and I agree. This is really good. Software development is inherently multidisciplinary, and I love that because the stereotype from let's go back to the 60s or 70s, you know, was like throw pizza under the door, don't talk to the software guy. They look like the programmer from Jurassic Park, you know, like super stereotypical. And they're like excellent at like algorithms and all the stuff that we just brushed over in school and never really understood. So they're that really nerdy, non-communicative stereotype. And I think now when you walk into a software shop, I mean, you're going to have people that are like that. And I'm not bashing on that because it takes all types to make the world move, right? And people, you don't have to be an excellent communicator to be an excellent developer. And sometimes you just need an excellent developer. You know, you need someone who can really go deep and understand the logic of things at a level that we don't. But the last software shop that I was close with, aside from the ones that I work with in my portfolio companies, the last software shop that I like walked around and bumped shoulders with the people there, they were good communicators and they were cool and they weren't in a dark room and they would all take pizza probably except for the gluten intolerant ones. But like, I felt like it was a more personable thing. And things have just changed, man. When I think about when I developed, I did not have access to a business analyst. I was the business analyst. I don't know why, but I didn't have access to QA. I did my own QA. I did my own product management and I did my own project management, right? And now you walk into a shop and it's like the developer does this working hand in hand with, you know, the people you said, the product managers and the UX and all that other stuff. It really is a different time right now, which is fun because we're going to talk in a little bit about the state of the software industry. So you have this epiphany with rethinking what bugs are and the possibility of coming out with, I don't want to say cleaner code, but a cleaner experience, like a better experience. That had to have been influenced by the time you spent doing QA, for sure. Right?
Absolutely. When I encountered things like you can't test quality into software, man, I felt that in my soul because I remember the hours of, okay, I got to run through this 7-page test script in IE5, and then I got to run through it in Firefox, and then I got to run through it in IE6.
Yeah.
And just this soul-sucking feeling of, does this prove there aren't any bugs? No.
Not necessarily. What I found is my users are so smart. They always find stuff that gets past us. And we do multiple passes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a user is using my software in ways that I never could have imagined. And I never designed it that way. And they're like, oh, by the way, this doesn't work. And we're like, well, who would have thought of that?
You know, there are certain users, they have this, I don't know, this occult ability. I call it bug gravity. That like their gravitational pull on things in the software that just don't work the way they should, just for some reason attracts itself to them. And these are people that you want to hire into QA departments because these are the people who find the flaws.
Yeah.
And it's just
they're creative.
Well, it's just the nature of who they are. Like, I mean, there's honestly something a little spooky and honestly maybe a little frightening about some of these people. I remember working with a few of them and like thinking, when I run my own company, I want to try to hire that person away because they're so good at finding bugs. They're so good at finding those flaws and those edge cases. And also, those people they're not running test scripts. They're doing exploratory testing.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to do that exploratory testing and actually find meaningful bugs is something very, very different than what typical QA is in running through the test script.
Yeah, I agree.
Your way through the app.
I feel like those people, it can be annoying. It can be tiring, right? When they come back and they're like, hey, found another thing. And it's like, oh man. But they're a gift. Like every bug that's reported is a gift. And the way I see it is, we have QA in place to catch as much as we can to give the users a better experience, like a frictionless experience. But anybody else who comes out, and just recently we had a massive upgrade on Jibber Jobber, and we have people come back and say, hey, this wasn't ready yet. Like I found this problem or this bug or this whatever. And we're collecting those and we're reacting to those. We're fixing them right away. But what our philosophy is that we're so grateful for these people bringing these to us, because for everything they bring us, that's probably saving hundreds of other people from having that same friction experience.
Yeah.
So,
well, and also one of the things that I think too few programmers realize is that bugs are a trailing indicator of quality. It means that something farther upstream went wrong. And if you've got one of those people that's frustrating you because they're finding all of these bugs, and your strategy for addressing those bugs is just playing whack-a-mole. Okay, I plugged that one up. Here it is. It shows up over here. And I fixed this one. Okay, now there's bugs over there. Like I fixed this one, and this one came back. You know, you're missing the opportunity of these bug reports are a gift. They're a gift that's showing you've got a design issue upstream. You've got a consistency issue upstream. And it's those upstream things that we've got to keep thinking about, because, QA can't be the filter that we're trying to shove the software through to get it to the users.
Yep.
And I've been in that position where everybody's breathing down my neck. Hey, Floyd, are you done testing? Hey, Floyd, are you done testing? And that doesn't help quality.
Plus, if it gets past you, it's your fault, right? Like it's the QA's. Why did QA pass this? Sean says, I feel seen. So Sean must either do a lot of QA or write a lot of bugs. I don't know, Sean.
I'm good at writing bugs.
So let's shift over from QA, although you can't necessarily detach QA and development. But let's move further into your career. I know you're in a consultancy now, but how did your career path go from software or QA, and then what? Like what did your resume kind of look like?
So the QA was you need a part-time job when you're working in college because you need money.
Plus, you were in industry. Like that's a big deal for anybody that wants to get in something. Get in it at the entry level. There's nothing wrong with paying your dues.
Heck yeah. I mean, my goal was always to move into a programmer role with that company. And I saw that QA role as a foot in the door. And I eventually did move up into a programmer role. The company got acquired. And so I went from there to Oklahoma Department of Career Tech, where my role was senior systems analyst. And that was that thing that you just described a little while ago, where you are the product manager, the project manager, the business analyst, the QA, the infrastructure specialist, whatever. Like you're responsible for the entire SDLC. And that was a great experience. A lot of building on those written communication skills, because when you work for the government, you write documents, and you write more documents, and then you write some more documents.
I used to work for the government. They're dry documents. I'll say right now.
You bet. So I worked as a programmer, and so I kind of worked my way up through job after job after job, bouncing around in industry a lot. So I went from that first job where I went from QA to engineer was a digital imaging and document intelligence company. Now, there were some pretty cool things that I was able to get done there. So for instance, one of my biggest projects there was we had a company who had a lot of engineering drawings that were subject to export laws. So because they were engineering drawings of airplanes and things that we didn't want foreign entities to be able to see, it was important for all of these drawings to have a watermark on them that says you're not allowed to export this, you're not allowed to show this to anybody that's not a U.S. citizen, yada, yada, yada. We found a way in 2004-ish, give or take, to find enough white space on these engineering drawings to put that watermark on there. bear in mind, these are engineering drawings that have been scanned. And so they got speckles, they've got skew, they've got printed text, they've got drawings, they've got borders. And the goal was to try to get it inside the border if you could fit it. That's not an easy algorithm to make, especially not back then. So those were the kinds of things that company did. And so being a programmer in a place like that was trial by fire, because it was so very nerdy, so very like highly technical.
And you're inventing technology. It's not like you can go to Stack Overflow and say, hey, how do I do this? You know, you were like really inventing new stuff, new ways of doing things.
Well, yes and no. I mean, they, of course, as a toolkit company, had a lot of the primitive type things like border finding and deskew and despeckle and that sort of thing. But being able to take those primitives and put them together to do something really advanced like that was hard. And that's before AI became the new hotness. And so we wrote an algorithm to do it. And
that's awesome.
It was so fun. It was a great accomplishment. So go from there to a place like SolarWinds, and I know SolarWinds has been in the news recently, but that's long after I was there. So
heard of this SolarWinds thing?
So SolarWinds, at that point, before they went public and before they kind of started doing a lot of acquisition, and so sort of growing by acquisition, network management software. So I'm a programmer building network software for somebody who manages a multi-state or maybe even multi-continent network. And this is probably somebody who gets paid and or gets their bonus based on the network's uptime. So this is somebody that has some pretty high expectations of the software that they use.
And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but these are wicked smart people. Like your customers are high demanding and crazy smart.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's hard to write software for somebody who knows the subject matter way deeper than you do. Yeah. It's really hard. From there, precision agriculture. So like digital imaging, network management, precision agriculture. So think about precision agriculture. Imagine a tractor driving through a field, planting seeds or harvesting crops or spraying fertilizer. It's producing geospatial data, polygons, with a resolution of, a couple of centimeters on the globe. So you've got awesome. a 4-point polygon where you're measuring centimeters all over the earth. Now that's pretty amazing. Now you take layer upon layer upon layer of planting, fertilization, harvest, soil test, electrical conductivity, and turn all of that information into a recommendation for a variable rate fertilizer recommendation, so that which areas of the field do you need to spray more and less fertilizer on to get the best return on investment for your fertilizer use. Not best yield, but best ROI.
That sounds fun, actually. Like that's a very complex problem to solve. That does really actually sound fun.
Yeah. And there's so much data. The data is so dense. I mean, you think about even a small agricultural field, 60 some odd acres, there are tens of thousands of polygons per layer sometimes. And doing geospatial operations on layer upon layer of that rich and dense stuff, that's very computationally expensive.
So all of this stuff you've been talking about were employee roles?
Yeah.
Okay. What, just out of curiosity, what was the, Patrick says, when are we ever going to use this math in the real world? Well, when you're doing that, when you're figuring out what to fertilize and how you plant it and what the soil looks like. Absolutely. Tell me about what the transitions to each of these companies looked like. My day job is working with people that are in transition. They're in job search. And I've always been intrigued at why people leave a company or why they go to another company. But what were some of these transitions like for you?
So leaving my first software job was an issue really of the company was getting acquired by another one in Tampa, and I didn't want to go to Tampa. So I had to go find somewhere else to be.
Personal choice.
Yeah. And I would say probably 30 to 50% of my job moves have been that. Definitely early. Like we made some choices to move to be closer to family or, that sort of thing. But some of it too was just recognizing I've kind of reached my plateau at this company. So for instance, at Solar Winds, I left Solar Winds 2 years after their IPO. When I started to sort of read the writing on the wall, a lot of the development was going overseas, and I really wasn't interested in being a manager. And so I'm like, yeah, it seems like my time. For some of my later transitions, it was just opportunities showing up in my network. Hey, Floyd, there's this company who's done offshore development, and they realized that was probably a mistake, and they need to bring it in-house, and they want to spin up an in-house development team. Will you come lead this team and hire in developers underneath you and oversee them? Like that's a hard thing to pass up, especially when you're just a senior level engineer in a company that's got plenty of managers and whatnot.
Plus, there comes a time where it's like, you know what? I've been here a while. I know what the next couple of years are going to look like. If they were what the last couple of years, and that's acceptable and it's fine, but this is exciting over here, right? So I don't know, man. Back in the olden days, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in the 70s, but I really grew up in the 80s. That was a time where it was kind of pounded into us that like job security and you stay with the company for 40 years and you retire with them. And there was this word loyalty, right? And nowadays, especially people my age, we're a little bit haunted by the idea of loyalty, because it's like, well, how come I keep changing jobs? Or what if I take that other job? Like, what does that mean for the company and my team? And it's like, well, honestly, your company and your team are going to be just fine. And they'll figure out how to replace you just fine. You are not, that company's success does not center around or on you, right? So I don't know. There's like a mindset, and I know the younger generation is shifting this mindset a lot easier, because loyalty is a two-way street. And if we're not getting loyalty, we're not going to be loyal. I mean, that's just the reality that these companies need to understand. But it's cool. I like how you're talking about these opportunities. I'm guessing you talked about your network, and these opportunities are coming from your network. I just want to emphasize, and you probably did this, but for anybody who's listening to this, make sure that as you go through these career transitions, you keep your network fresh and healthy. Like, don't burn bridges. And it's tempting. And there's some funny stuff online where it's like, hey, how did what's the worst way that somebody ever left their job? And they're like, they had a screw you cake and like music, and they danced all the way out. And they're like, I'm never setting foot in here again. And it's like, okay, that is funny, but I would never advise somebody to do that, because you never know who's watching that and how they're thinking, okay, that person's a jerk, and I would never want them on my team, right?
Absolutely. I think if I were to look back on my career and say my number one mistake in my career, it was recognizing that those interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, I really invested too little early in my career in developing those skills. And I've been fired twice. And had I been more attuned to the environment around me, I could have gotten out or prolonged my employment long enough to find something else prior to that happening. I mean, both were toxic environments. And if I had it to do over again, looking back, hindsight's always 2020, I would have done things different, but I still would have left both places.
Yeah. I was in the same situation where I knew I should have left one, and it took a major toll on my relationships and my health, but I just couldn't let go. It was like the monkey holding onto the ball inside the box, and I just couldn't let go, because I had a salary and a title and benefits and all this stuff, even though it was killing me and it was hurting my relationships with people that I actually cared about. And so when they let me go, it was really a huge gift. It really was. It hurt, but looking back on it, it was like, thank you for doing something that I honestly wasn't brave enough to do on my own, really.
Yeah. I mean, later on in my career, I found that I started getting this sort of tension between like, here's the contribution I'd love to be able to make to this company, but I can't because I'm a full-time employee, and it would be at the risk of long-term relationships with these people. And like, I can relate to you about the whole loyalty thing because I'm right on the border between Gen X and millennial. So I make fun of both.
Yeah.
Which is always kind of fun. So if I've got somebody that's a little bit younger than me, freaking millennials, and if I've got somebody that's a little bit older than me, all the okay boomer,
Yeah.
memes and whatnot. Memes are my mother tongue anyway, so But one of the things that I noticed definitely later on as I moved from software engineer to software architect and then into like director positions was that there's this power about being an outsider and being able to speak into a situation as an outsider. And being in that position was actually the thing that sort of propelled me forward a couple of times. I remember before I went independent as an independent consultant, my last full-time job prior to that, when I was getting recruited, I sat down with the president of the company and one of the other managing partners, and they explained to me what was going on with their company. And I just gazed into the crystal ball for them, it seemed, because they were just so amazed. Oh, you're having quality problems. Let me guess. You fix one bug and another one shows up later, and then you fix that one, and another bug shows up, and then you fix that one, and then the original bug shows back up. How did you know that? And I had multiple different moments with them in that first meeting where I just sort of predicted, this is probably one of the symptoms of what's going on for y'all, isn't it? And they're like, yes, can you help us? And being an outsider, being able to look into that gave me a perspective that actually allowed me to come in and fix it. And so that was the second company in a row where they were in trouble and I kind of helped pull them from the fire. And that trouble was quality problems.
Interesting.
Engineers just slinging code and not recognizing the onus upon them as the engineers, not on QA people, but on themselves as engineers to own the quality. And then for the company, the management to understand, well, what is quality and what are the things that I as a manager and I as a president of a company that's writing software, what do I need to know? What do I need to care about? How do I know that we're building software that I can count on?
So, man, it's interesting that we've talked a lot about quality. So I'm actually working with a guy right now who's writing a book on software quality. And it's fascinating for me to like dive back into that world. But a lot of what you talked about today is about quality. I'm thinking right now that quality is or leads to user experience. User experience is all about quality. I have two questions, and I don't know if we're going to have enough time for both of these. So let's transition just a little bit. My first question, which I'm sure we could talk for hours about, talk about being a consultant. Like, there's a lot of people that I talk with. You have this idea that there's security in a job, and there's comrades and like all that other stuff, but obviously there's reasons that you're a software consultant, right? So tell me about that, the business of being a consultant. Is it worth it? Is it fun? What are some of the realities and the challenges?
I actually wrote a blog article about transitioning into consulting full time, and my experience being a consultant, it is the culmination of a really broad career and acquiring a lot of different skills and being able to pull all of these multidisciplinary skills together and offer to a client or a potential client, I can help you in a very broad way. That's kind of my jam. I sort of pitch myself as I can operate at the C-suite and I can operate at the programmer's desk and anywhere in between.
Where are you finding more demand?
Honestly, it's all through there because most of the time when companies are looking for a software consultant, they need somebody to sort of educate them and help them understand this is how software projects work. And there's so much demand in the industry for presidents and C-level executives to understand what's going on with software development. How do I manage it? How do I understand whether or not it's going well or not? And there's a lot of work to be made, but also the flip side of that is there are lots of consultants that will just talk. And for me, it's the balance of I'm slinging code every day too. And that is one of the things that I use to help build my credibility with my clients.
Yeah. So do you enjoy being a consultant?
I love it. But I also recognize like it fits me because I'm Floyd. And if you're not Floyd, it might not fit you, you know? Um, it's a combination of acquisition of skill and aptitude, preference, and honestly, luck. I feel like there's a lot of good fortune that came together for me to be a full-time consultant, and I'm enjoying it and I'm grateful for it, and I'm also doing everything I can to sort of give back as well.
What would you say is the hardest part? Let me preface this. When people come to me and talk about products and shooting products out, or actually this book guy, the guy that I'm working with on the book, we're going through the hard part of writing a book right now. And I'm like, hey, by the way, when we're done writing this book, this is the easy part. The hard part is marketing, like to get somebody to buy a book or to get lots of somebody's to buy a book. That's freaking hard. And maybe it's just hard for me. Like for professional marketers, that's the easy part, and writing is the hard part. What would you say for you is the hard part, or the hard parts of being a consultant?
Um, it's all of it is hard. It's all hard.
All right, now we're getting real.
Um, I think time management is a big thing. Recognizing your limits is a big thing. It's easy to accidentally take on too much work or to spread yourself a little too thin across too many different clients or too many different initiatives.
And they'll feel that when you're too thin, they feel it. They feel unloved.
Yes. And maintaining those client relationships is super, super important. And that is hard. And it means that whenever you catch even the slightest little hint of this client may be displeased, you get on the phone, you talk to them, you make sure to smooth things over because you don't want to let something like that sit and build.
Yep. Yeah. You can let stuff like that sit and build at work because somebody will take care of it. Some leader will take care of it, or the person will leave, or you'll leave, or something like that. But when you're building a consultancy, what you're doing in 5 or 10 years from now has to do with the relationships that you're cultivating right now.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier about network. My network is my most valuable asset as a consultant. The people that I engage with on Techlahoma, local user groups, conferences, like these are the people that help me find my next clients, and they're so valuable. And also too, like I care about my community because I care about what's going on in the industry, and I want to make a positive impact on it. That was actually one of the things that for me was really, really important in becoming an independent consultant, starting my own company, is I wanted to have an impact on the software industry. I didn't want to just be another dude who was, earning a paycheck by, being a consultant. I wanted to actually make an impact.
So the joke in California, and I say California because, Silicon Valley and all that stuff. The joke is if somebody says I'm a consultant, it just means they're laid off and they haven't gotten their next job yet, right? We're not, in America, we're not really allowed to talk about money and stuff, but generally speaking, somebody that has, good experience and good skills and stuff like that, and they hustle, like they're good at all the stuff. They're good at the hard stuff. They're good at the networking. They're good at the relationships, the operational part of billing and all that stuff. And of course, they're good at whatever they're bringing to their client. What can a consultant expect to make? I mean, more than a job? Around the same as a job? Tons of money?
I think a lot of it depends on how you market yourself. Like what is the niche that you're trying to fill? Who are your potential clients, and how deep are their pockets, and how much of an impact can you make on your clients? Like for me, going from a full-time job to consulting, I saw in my first year, doing some mental math here, about a 33% increase in take-home pay. I mean, it
And that would cover really your benefits, really.
Well,
like a 33% increase is like, okay, well now I can afford health insurance or whatever.
Well, it actually that's beyond the benefits. Like I'm factoring
Okay.
that out. So like
Okay,
I
cool.
literally just I'm bringing home that much more cash. And of course it's wonderful, but also all of those things that we just talked about, like those are hard things. And if you're not staying on top of those things, you could very easily get yourself into a position where you've got angry clients or clients that just go away.
Yep.
And that's not happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Last week I was talking with Barry in the Netherlands, and he was talking about burnout in different parts of his career. One of which was when he was, I think, a Big 4 or Big 6 consultant. Like it can take a ton of work. What's that quote? I heard somebody say, or saw somebody say a long time ago, oh shoot, what was it? I work for myself, so I get to choose which 24 hours of the day I work or whatever. But the idea was that I'm pretty much working all the time. And I think as an independent, and I've been independent since 2006 because I I can't get a job, or I can't keep a job. I did for a little bit, but I mean, I had to figure out my boundaries. I had to figure out when I was going to get to work and when I was going to leave work and when I was going to exercise and all that stuff. Like at a job, people leave around 5 or 6 usually from an office. And then somebody turns the lights out and the janitor comes and it's like, okay, I get the hint, I'm leaving. But man, when you work out of your house and there is no janitor because actually you are the janitor, you have to make those boundaries or you'll go crazy and you'll get into some very unhealthy habits.
Yeah, thankfully, I feel like I had to learn how to draw those boundaries for multiple jobs because I had multiple jobs where that hustle culture that, like, oh, you're not putting in 50, 60-hour weeks every single day or every single week, um, I had to draw boundaries and I had to just push back on that and say, no, I'm not going to produce what you think I'm going to produce by just cranking out more hours. So I feel like I was well equipped when I finally pressed the start button on being a full-time independent consultant. I was well equipped for that. Also, my wife just won't tolerate me becoming a workaholic.
Same.
She just won't have it. And she really helps to sort of counterbalance that, especially when I've got a client that I love and I'm really trying to help them, really trying to do right by them. And for me too, like one of my favorite parts about being a consultant is I get to pick who my clients are. And I sort of joked with one of my clients recently because I had just ended a client relationship, and I joked like every consultant has that least favorite client, and that's the one that's going to get cut whenever a new opportunity presents itself, or whenever one client needs a little bit more of your time.
Yeah, been there. We don't have a lot of time left. We could probably talk. You could probably talk for a long time about this, but I want to go into your ideas on the state of the software industry. Like what are you seeing now, and what does that mean for the future?
I see a lot of emphasis on getting people that aren't programmers into programming. So that sort of entry level skill building stuff. And once they sort of get to that larval programmer state, where they can get a junior programmer position at a company and do okay, provided that they've got a little bit of leadership, a little bit of mentorship, something like that, or maybe not, and they just kind of have to find their way. I feel like there's this gap in skill building for people that get to that point, and then, okay, where do I go from here? Like, what's my path? What are the skills that I need to build? And for me, that's really, really important, because when I look back on the successes in my career, it's because I knew here's this skill that I needed to grow in. Here's this thing that I needed to develop. Here's this way of working that I needed to tune up. I was lucky enough to have good leadership, good mentorship, but not everybody has that. Also, the software industry, unfortunately, still has a lot of sexism and a lot of racism in it as well, and that hits home for me. It's something that I'm really sensitive to, because I don't know why. It's just something that matters to me. And I know that you and I, we're a couple of white dudes, and it's kind of awkward and uncomfortable to talk about sexism or racism as a couple of white dudes. But the truth is like if we don't talk about that, we're putting the onus on the people who are feeling marginalized to be the ones to do the talking about it, in addition to suffering that marginalization. So we've got to be the ones to talk about it. There's a real vacuum of mid to senior level experience, or at least what I've seen in the industry, where you may have somebody who's got on their resume 10 years of experience, but it's not really 10 years of experience. And I've seen this over and over again. I've reviewed hundreds, maybe thousands of resumes, and I know I've absolutely done hundreds of interviews. And there's a big difference between 10 years of experience and the same year of experience repeated 10 times.
Or 10 years of watered down experience, where I just read something, I retweeted this a few days ago. It said something like the average developer spends 1.3 something hours a day coding. And it's like, you're not 10 years of 1.3 hours a day coding is not like a full-on developer. You know what I mean? Like, you're not really getting into all the problems. So are you advocating for the people who are repeating that yearly thing to like move and do a different, like get more breadth or get into a different experience, so they're just not having that single year of experience 10 times over?
As far as advocacy for me, I think there are three things that are really, really important for me. Number one, get plugged into your community. You've got to get exposure outside of what you do 8 hours a day at your job. A lot of times what I see happening is what I call the Galapagos Island effect, where you've got creatures at a company that are in an isolated ecosystem and they're surviving and they're doing okay. But you take these really awkward, weird creatures and you take them out of that isolated ecosystem, you put them somewhere else, they're going to get eaten alive. And that isolation is so dangerous. You talked earlier about your experience where you brought database design knowledge to this team of people who, in your words, were smarter than you. It's this exposure to new ideas. It's exposure to things that are outside of your norm. That's super important. The second thing is you've got to have mentorship. You've got to have people in your life who have your permission to tell you the truth, even if it's going to hurt, even if it's going to say, look, dude, your social skills suck, and that's why you're not getting a job. It's not fun to hear that, but it will change your career if you draw people in who have your permission to tell you that. And then the third thing, and this is something that I'm really trying to do. If you've got the skills, if you've got the experience, you've got to give back. You've got to invest in your technology community. This is one of the reasons why I really love Techlahoma, because like this is an entire organization geared around doing this for the community, the technology community here in Oklahoma. As a matter of fact, I just hired my first apprentice, and if you rewind the clock 5 years, I would have laughed at you if you told me you're going to hire an apprentice in 5 years, Floyd. But here I am. It's somebody who's relatively new to the industry. They've got great skills for the amount of experience they've got. They've got great work ethic. Just the desire to learn and to grow is just amazing. I've watched him just go from he made a career pivot in his mid to late 30s, and I watched him do it, and I watched him just throw himself into it, and I watched him develop skills in such a rapid amount of time. And when I had this opportunity to bring him on, I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to go do that. And honestly, I'm really excited about that, because I have the opportunity to shortcut a lot of the hardest lessons that I had to learn. And it took me over a decade to learn those hard lessons. And so he's going to be able to move forward in his career, acquire those skills, and be so much more valuable, not only to himself and his family, but also to his employers in such a shorter amount of time than I was.
Yeah. I love that. I love mentoring. That's how this conversation started with me helping this guy out with his book. Was he's like, I need a mentor. And I'm not an amazing or an expert book writer, but I've done it 3 times. And so I know just enough just a little bit ahead. Like I'm not Stephen King, but I know just enough to say, here's what the next step is. Let's do this. And then here's the next step. Okay, so software. Do you want to talk about languages? Do you want to talk about methodologies? Like, as far as state of the software industry goes, like what really stands out to you?
You're not going to be surprised when I say quality. We don't seem to have a good sense as an industry of what software quality means, and it's got to be something that starts at the top. We've got to equip presidents, C-level executives, directors, middle managers with at least enough knowledge so that they know whether or not the people that they're responsible for managing are doing the right things when it comes to building quality software. I don't think we have that. I mean, this book Accelerate, I don't know if you've read it, does a great job of sort of explaining here are the hallmarks of healthy software organizations. Here are the hallmarks of software organizations that are unhealthy, but it's still a relatively new book. It came out in, what was it, 2019? And we still have a ways to go as an industry before that starts to become common knowledge. And as a result, we have lots of companies who are honestly a little afraid of software development. They know they need it, but they don't know how to control it. They don't know how to manage it. They put weird expectations on it that aren't reasonable, and then get frustrated when those unreasonable expectations turn out bad for them.
I'm not surprised that you're bringing this up because of what you talked about early on in your history and your path. I am surprised that in 2021 we're talking about quality as a major issue with software development, right? Like this is technology agnostic, it's language agnostic. Quality principles and ideas and issues were born when software was born. As far as software goes, like quality was there with engineers building bridges and stuff like that. But it kind of, honestly, it does baffle me that right now where you are talking about quality still being an issue. But we've seen quality kill people, right? Like with the Tesla cars, it's exceptionally sad that there's been some failures, but some of those failures led to deaths, and that really, I don't know everything about that, so I'm not going to completely and only pin it on quality, but there's an element of quality, I'm sure, that had to do with that. And like, I can throw something out in my software right now and it can fail, and it's like, oh, okay, we'll go fix that. But like, there really are, and not to put everything on Elon, but SpaceX, like, the failures in some of those things definitely had to do with quality. And by no way am I throwing any shade on him, because what he's doing and how he's changing a lot of different aspects of the world is amazing. Okay, so quality. What else? What else for state of the software industry?
I think, gosh, it's hard to not get off of that. I think for me, I kind of want to go deeper on quality because it's so multifaceted. I recently gave a talk for a local user group here in Oklahoma about testing and quality, and the way I presented that was, I'm your new CTO, and I just fired the QA department, and here's what we're going to do now. I think this idea of quality so often gets misplaced as this is the QA organization's job, and I think quality instead, maybe if we can reframe it as like a professionalism thing. It's not a matter of just writing quality. It's a matter of being able to hold our heads up and be proud of the profession that we do, and to be able to be confident and to go to our employers or to our potential clients or to our clients and say, I'm an expert, and here's the evidence of that expertise, because I'm producing something that I can count on, and I don't have to dance this weird dance with you about, yeah, of course it's got bugs, because that's just how software works, but I also want you to trust me.
Yeah. I'm not going to get away from quality either. I think owning my own company, the two of the big things that have jumped out at me, a software company, I should say, is quality. and the user experience. Early on, I hired people that were graphics and layout and whatever, but they weren't UX people. And the first UX person I hired said, by the way, I'm going to give you wireframes that are in black and white. I'm not going to give you pretty. I'm not going to give you color, because that is not the point of UX. And that's when I started having this massive mind shift towards understanding more the experience part of UX than any of the layout or presentation.
Can I got one more name and email?
Oh, he was so awesome to work with. One last question, which goes into the state of software. There, ever since I've been involved in technology, there's always been these language wars. Give me your 2 cents on this. Like, if you've been in the industry for 20 years, you have an opinion about which language is better, or the concept of a better language, right? What do you think about, you know, as a CTO or a consultant, choosing languages and making language decisions?
I'll break out another, the same Oklahoma phrase that I used earlier. Every dog has hair. Every language has its imperfections.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times language choice is probably a lot more arbitrary than people want to believe that it is.
That's what I've seen.
Most modern programming languages are just fine. Do they have warts? Yes. Are there things that are awkward in some of them that are less awkward in others? Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you're in an environment where that's mattering a whole heck of a lot, become a polyglot environment. But you've got to manage that, because if you've got a bunch of Ruby over here and you've got a pile of C# over there and you got some like JavaScript over there and, you know, you've got some Python here, like that could potentially accidentally become a real headache to manage. But if you're looking down the barrel of, we're going to have to spend 6 months building this thing that's stupid easy in this other language, use the other language. It's okay.
Yeah. All right. I like it. I'm good with that. I hate it when somebody comes in, they're like, hey man, I just read this article, or I spent the weekend, you know, in this environment, and we need to switch everything over. It's like, whoa, slow down. Switch everything, dude. If your app is a week old, switch it over, right? But if you're dealing with something that's years old and has an immense amount of complexity, you gotta be super careful in how you bounce around the different languages and all that stuff. So,
yeah, and a lot of that is it's RDD, it's resume driven development. It's not that I think this is going to be best for the company, because a lot of times programmers are not thinking in terms of economics. They're not thinking in terms of how does this impact the bottom line of the company that I work for. They're just thinking, how does this impact my career?
Yeah. Or what am I expert in? What am I comfortable with? What do I already know? How can I make the biggest impact right away? Well, it's with the languages that I know. Or like you were saying, how will it impact my future careers? What do I want to learn? Like what smells good right now? All right, man. Well, let's wrap this up. Floyd May in obviously Oklahoma. We've heard that a few times. I'd never heard anybody with so much Oklahoma pride. What's the population there? Is it like 2 million?
Yeah, give or take. The Tulsa Metro is, I think, just a little under 1 million, and then the Oklahoma City Metro has, I think, relatively less, and then most everywhere else in Oklahoma is pretty
tiny.
Rural.
Yeah. So maybe that's why I don't hear a whole lot of the Oklahoma pride, is because I don't know a whole lot of people from Oklahoma. But hey, Sean and Devin, nice to meet you guys. So Floyd May, Pluralsight author, go in and check out Pluralsight this month. It's free. Otherwise, he has some courses. I have some courses. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Floyd, it's been a pleasure getting to know you better, and hopefully we'll see you in person at one of these conferences in the next year or two.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
All right, talk to y'all later. Bye.